Hey y'all, we are here with some great news for you, especially if you are a viewer to the Journey to Peace podcast. We want this tribe to grow and we want to expand this message. So here's where you can help us. This entire month of August, you have the opportunity to win some great prizes. I'm going to let you know what they are, but here's what you need to do. You need to subscribe to the podcast. You need to like our new Facebook page called Journey to Peace, and you need to share it on your social media because we want to expand this message of how we can all find peace through Christ. All right, now if you do those three things throughout this month of August, you'll have an opportunity to win signed copies of Gibson's books, Being a Promotable Person and Staying Positive in a Negative World. This book bundle, maybe even some more, may be yours if you do those three things, like our new Journey to Peace podcast Facebook page. Also, share it on your social media. And of course, make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell on our podcast page on YouTube. You have this month of August, also my birthday month, to celebrate with us.
Well, we have a really great episode of Journey to Peace with Gibson and Brigitte today because I'm joined by the woman I could partly say is probably responsible for me being here. My friend and mentor, Sharon Gill, for many years has been encouraging me to step out in faith and have this podcast and carry your voice even further. And I'm so glad that Sharon is joining us. She is a business strategist. She's a leadership consultant for over 30 years. Her and her husband, Wayne, have led businesses and ministries in our community here in South Florida and beyond, truly touching the world for Christ. Sharon, I'm so glad that you're joining us today. Thank you for being here.
I'm so glad to be here, Bridget. And who knew this was going to happen, right? God
Well,
works.
you knew.
I, I mean, I saw it 15 years ago, but it's everything is in God's timing, and it doesn't always work the way we want it or on our timetable, but God is never wrong and his call is irrevocable. And I just saw this call on your life 15 years ago. Like, I don't know if maybe she should be doing her own show, even on the side. So
Yeah.
I'm glad to be here in this seat on the other side of what God showed me in the spirit. So
I
happy to be
remember.
here.
I'm so glad you're here. Back at the radio station, like you said, over 15 years ago, we were headed to the ministry that you were running at the time, Oasis
Hmm.
of Compassion, to do an interview and find out about this organization. And then just hearing you speak with so much passion for reaching people and showing them the love, especially people who are down and out in our community, and what your ministry was doing to help kind of give them a hand up. And I just remember thinking, wow, this is a woman of passion. This is a woman of vision. And I'm just so glad that we've kept in contact all these years, and a friendship and a mentorship, because you've meant so much. But you have done that for many people, because I know that's really part of your heartbeat, right? Is to help women see themselves the way God sees them, and really
That's right.
see their value and what they're able to offer beyond maybe their current circumstance, right?
Bridget, it's so true. This is something this is a gift I think I've had since I was 12 years old, and I was in high school at 12, back in Jamaica. And I would see kids my age, girls my age, and I would just see something that they don't see. And I couldn't explain it, but I would befriend these kids who are not part of the popular club, so to speak. And I would, at that age, just be confident in their lives. I never thought that that was going to lead to me, running a nonprofit or running this ministry, the Gorgeous Women movement. But this was just a gifting, a passion, a desire that God placed in my heart at that age. And it was at that age that I was actually saved. So God, I think when he called me to salvation, kind of gave me this understanding of seeing people through the eyes of Christ, and not through the eyes of what's obvious, but how God sees them. And it's been a blessing because I've been able to meet so many wonderful women who, and men too, but my ministry is called to women who I'm able to sit on the front row of them becoming the best that they can be, or who God intended them to be. So it's been a blessing for me to be a part of their journey and see how God works in their lives and so on.
Yes, the Gorgeous Woman movement. We're going to be, I know, here in South Florida having
Yes.
an event very soon. So we're going
Very
to
soon.
definitely have to link that information, the Gorgeous Woman Conference. And I know the theme this year is something you're really excited about. So I really want those who can join us on
Yeah,
September 27th to be sure to join us because it's going to be all about expansion, right?
right. And we're honored that you're the MC this year. And look what God's doing in your life, right? It may look like a contraction because this is something I've learned from Joseph's life, right? Contraction comes before expansion in a lot of times. Contract is it's like that bow and arrow, when you and then you let it go and it goes further than you could even think, right? And I think of Joseph's life and how it looked like it was contracting, 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 but it was preparation. It was preparation. And when he emerged according to God's perfect plan, he was second to Pharaoh, the second most powerful man on the earth at that time. But where did it start? In a pit,
Yeah, really.
prison, and then the world leader. So people look at the outer and they say, wow, this is happening and that is happening. And maybe you, Bridget, might have even thought, oh my God, what happened? My influence is gone. No, no, God's doing a new thing. And I'll talk about how that even played into my own life when I went through a season. But contraction often precedes expansion, and I'll touch on that in my talk on at the conference in September.
September 27th. Absolutely.
Yes.
Again, we're
Yes.
going to have to link that below because we want everybody to be in that place with us. It's going to be powerful.
Yes.
But Sharon, it
Yes.
was just a few years ago. You and I got together for lunch and just catching up on life. And I know
Yes.
you were telling me about a season where I think anybody would struggle to find peace. Tell us about the journey you went through with your health a few years ago.
November 18th, 2021. And I'll never forget the date. It's a date you never forget. The date when my phone rang. I had gone in to do a biopsy, well, actually a mammogram. And that day, the tech was very, thorough. She said, I think I see something. And so right there and then, they said, let's do a biopsy. Same day, didn't let me go home. And so, and unlike I've done a biopsy before in the past, but unlike any other one, I just felt weird. As a matter of fact, when she said let's do a biopsy, I started crying right away. But I, went ahead and I did the biopsy, and it was now the phone call. And when the phone rang, Bridget, I remember saying to my husband, Wayne, I think I want you to be with me when I pick up this phone today. And Wayne came beside me, and I answered the phone. And just the way the lady said, Mrs. Gill, she was compassionate voice. I'm like, what is it? And she said, your test came back positive for, she used the word invasive ductal carcinoma. And I said, okay, what does that mean? She said, it's cancer, ma'am. And I said, and I just, my just froze. My husband, I could hear him in the background. He kept saying, are you sure? He could not believe it. Are you sure? Are you sure? But I had heard it and I was pretty much sure. And I remember right at that moment, my daughter had just walked in with my granddaughter, and I was like, oh my God, I don't want him to hear this. And my husband, went out and I think he spoke to my daughter. I remember seeing her run out the door, and I'm like, oh boy. So I'm gonna have to not only manage my own emotions, right? I'm gonna have to manage my daughter, my son, my husband, and I'm not telling my granddaughter. And like you said, a call like that is a life-changing call. It's a life-altering call. It's a peace-robbing call. And there are just no words. There's no words that your husband can say because, again, I'm trying to manage my own emotions, and now I'm feeling bad for him and where his mind might be going on my daughter. And so, Bridget, I think it might have been a couple days later, I decided I was going to talk to God. And I was going to talk to God in such a way that I just wanted no interruptions. So there was an extra room in my house, guest bedroom. And I said to my husband, look, I'm going to take a few days and I'm going to go in that room. I'm going to live in that room and I am going to just seek God on this. And I decided I was going to fast as well because I needed literally no distraction, not even the distraction of food. So with some green tea, this is what I'm drinking right now, some water, and a Bible and a journal. I went to the room and I wasn't asking God, why me? I wasn't, none of that. I was asking God, what is the meaning of this? What is the meaning of this? Because I had asked God years before that for every trial that I go through, one thing I'm asking is to show me the meaning of the trial. So with that in mind, I'm like, okay, God, what is the meaning of this? And I kept reading my Bible, fasting, praying, crying here and there, but not much. But I think it might have been day 3 of my fast, right? Of being in that room, just coming out to bathe, not speaking with anyone. I think God began to really speak to me, Bridget.
Mm.
And God, because one of the things I was asking God, could you give me another dream? Because He had given me a dream some years ago. Could you visit me in dreams again? Could you talk to me? I need to hear. And then it was day 3 when I clearly heard in my spirit, the Lord said, there'll be no more dreams. There'll be no more dreams because you haven't completed the dream that I gave you 20 years ago. And I'm thinking, I think I have. At the time I was running a law practice and the Lord had called me to do the charity, to do ministry. And so I'm thinking to myself, I did that for 16 years. I did a church for like 5 years. I mean, what could it be? And I heard clearly, go back to the scripture I had given you, which was literally in a dream. It was in a dream. I was fasting at that time too for 3 days in 2002 at the time, asking God to show me what is your purpose for my life. Because I'd felt like I was running a law practice with my husband, making money, but it just felt empty. It just felt empty. And it was during that fasting period that this man appeared and literally handed me a sheet of paper like this and said, go. And on the sheet of paper was Ephesians chapter 3, verses 8. And it was the Apostle Paul saying he was a chief sinner, least of all God's people, but he was called to preach the good news. And so I went back and I'm reading Ephesians 3, 8, 9, and 10, which is what I've always, and that had allowed me to launch the nonprofit, launch my church. Based on that dream, I walked away from my corporate work into ministry, 2 ministries. However, the Lord said, read it again. So I'm reading it again. And it was the Apostle Paul saying he's called to preach the good news to the Gentiles, etc. And then I remembered that I really struggled at the preaching part. That my pastor at the time in that church had asked me 3 times that year to preach. And as always, I had come up with an excuse not to preach based on fear of man's opinions, right? Now, I've spoken publicly other places, but when it came to preaching, I've always felt like sometimes the church doesn't look kindly on women preaching. They don't like static. And so I'd always walked away from it. And this pastor had asked me literally a week before my diagnosis to preach the New Year's Eve service online because it was during COVID. And I came up with another excuse again why I couldn't preach because I was going to Florida for vacation. And he said to me at the time, you can record it ahead of time. And I found another excuse. And the Lord showed me that you have allowed fears to dominate your life. You fear flying, you fear lizards, you fear speaking, you fear men's opinions, you fear. And a dam broke. A dam literally broke inside of my spirit. And I just began to weep and weep and weep and weep and weep. And the Lord reminded me that partial obedience is still disobedience. Even though I've done great things with my charity for 16 years, helped thousands of families, even though I'd baptized, many, many people through my church, I still had shrunk back because of men's opinions. And listen, I wanted to say this. God doesn't cause suffering. God didn't give me the cancer so he could prove a point to me. No, no, he did not do that. Okay. So I want to make that clear. In my quest for answers, God showed me these things. And then he also showed me some other things, like the power of forgiveness, forgiving people who've hurt you, and how important that is for healing, that he heals through love. And the love has to be unconditional. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I've always tried to love everyone. I mean, I'm in ministry, I love everyone. And the Lord showed me two people that I had more of a conditional love for. Like, okay, if they do things the right way, all is good. But if they do things not the way that I want, it's like it's more annoying. And God says, I love you unconditionally. And I want you to go deeper in how you love people. And I thought to myself, man, I thought I had already, based on something God had told me like 15 years before. It's like, no, I heal through love, no resentment, unforgiveness. You got to have complete forgiveness. So God's been that day three, just ministering to me and just showing me things in the word. And literally, people says, can you hear God's voice? All I can say to you is this. It was as clear as me talking to you in that room. And by the time I was done listening to God and crying, a peace began to fill my soul. Peace, acceptance. And can I say this? I want to just thank God for it. Thank God for the diagnosis. And it sounds weird. It sounds weird. Nobody wants it. Surely, I sure don't like it, but it placed me on a journey with God that was deeper than I had before. And remember, I was already an ordained pastor who didn't preach, a minister to the community, a lover of God, a Bible study teacher, an author of a Bible study. But here was another level that God says, I want to come up higher. Like, wow. So I don't know if you want me to pause right here.
Yeah, that's a good place. No,
Yeah.
that's a great place to pause, because you talked about it's just in that moment of getting that diagnosis, what that did, and the fear, like even before the diagnosis, even crying, just hearing that the biopsy had to happen, and just that, what could this mean? And then getting the diagnosis and seeing the response of your loved ones. But then saying, and it was interesting because you said it took you actually a few days before you actually went to really say, okay, God, I need to really speak with you. So did you have a few days of just like turmoil, ups and kind of, I don't know what to do next, that kind of brought you to the like kind of realization, wait, I need to spend some time with my father? Or were those few days kind of like up and down for you?
They were more like a shock.
Yeah.
More like when you hear cancer, you really, your mind go to death. You start to see like, okay, and the way my mind works, my family is really everything to me. So I'm thinking, okay, what are they gonna do? What's my husband gonna do? What's my daughter gonna do? Oh my God. So so the turmoil was, oh, death, they're gonna have to deal with this. My God, because you have no idea when without further testing where it's at, is it spread? The word she used was invasive. So if, with my limited knowledge of cancer, because I will be honest, I was the first woman in my family with cancer. No one on my dad's side either. So I didn't have any experience with it. So the word invasive, in my mind, I felt like my body was invaded. It was just a term that they use because I guess cancer starts in your nipple and then no one sees it. And then once it goes into your actual breast, it's called invasive. But in my mind, with the limited knowledge, before going to the doctor for more information, I was like, oh my God, it's invaded.
Mm.
What does this mean? I wonder how fast. How much time do I have? Wow. Wow. So those were the questions that were going in and out of my mind
Yeah.
because I never felt the lump. It wasn't something that was visible, physical. There was no pain. So it was just a time of confusion. And my husband, I could see him trying to be that man he's always been for me, like my backstop, my ride or die,
Your rock, right?
my
Yeah.
rock, and he prayed over me. He's like, no, God, no, and he prayed and we're trying to be like like we're trying for some normalcy, but it was more of a blur.
Mm.
And then I thought, okay, I can't live in blur. I
Yeah.
can't live in blur. I have to talk to God. I cannot live
Yeah.
in blur. I need to talk to God, but I need
Right.
to be in a quiet space where I
Mm.
can really lean in and try to understand what's the game plan. You
Mhm.
know, what I wanted most was peace.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I wanted most was peace.
Mhm.
Peace, because without the peace, it's a real mess. You can't think straight. You can't make plans. You spiral really fast. And let me say it too, for those people who have a diagnosis or loss of a job or whatever it may be, the 3 a.m. tossing and turning is real. It's a common theme for people who are under a lot of stress. And so before I had the peace, and it didn't happen immediately, but before I had the full peace, the 3 a.m. were terrible.
Mhm.
But I will also say that it was the diagnosis that really introduced me to the Holy Spirit in a
Mm.
unique way.
Mm.
I mean, of course, we know about the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, but it was during that process that God pointed me to the Holy Spirit.